Welcome to another deep dive with us. Today we're going to get into entrepreneurship
Ooh, fun.
and really dig into what actually makes people successful. I'm not just going to talk about, working hard or, any of that stuff. We're going to really look at the research.
Yeah. Get into the nitty-gritty.
Yeah. So our source for this deep dive is an article from Harvard Business School online, and it's called "What Does It Take to Be a Successful Entrepreneur?" And
Catchy title.
right, super catchy title. But I think one of the things that is really important to acknowledge from the very beginning is that, a lot of people talk about entrepreneurship in a very kind of, inspiring and sort of rah-rah kind of way.
Oh, yeah. Super positive.
Yeah. And I think that's important to a degree, but we also need to acknowledge the realities
For sure.
of how difficult it is.
It's not all rainbows and sunshine.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the article starts out with this really interesting statistic, and it says
Okay.
that up to 75% of startups actually fail.
Yikes.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
That's a big number. And this figure comes from a Harvard Business School professor named Shikhar Ghosh.
Okay.
So it's not, just some random thing off the internet.
No. Yeah. He seems to know what he's talking about.
Exactly.
So clearly it takes more than just a cool idea to be a successful entrepreneur.
Right. And I think one of the big things that this kind of debunks is this idea that there's one type of personality.
Oh, yeah. The myth of the, lone wolf, risk-taking, business person.
Right. Born to be an entrepreneur.
Right. Exactly.
So the article really tries to push back against that and say, research actually points to behaviors being way more important
Behaviors.
than inherent traits.
So that's good news for us, right? Because behaviors can be learned. We can work on those.
Right. Exactly. So that's really encouraging because it's not about, am I the right type of person? It's about, what are the things I need to work on?
Exactly. So let's get into some of those behaviors. I'm curious what the article has to say about this.
Okay, so one of the things that they really highlight, and this might be a surprise,
Okay.
is curiosity.
Curiosity. Okay. I wouldn't have thought of that as the number one, entrepreneur trait.
Right. And I think it can be easy to think, well, shouldn't an entrepreneur be focused on their product and their service?
Right. Laser focused.
And what they're offering, yeah.
So why is this broader curiosity so important?
Well, I think what they're saying is that entrepreneurs need to be curious about the market,
Okay. Yeah.
about their customers, about their competitors even.
Makes sense.
Because they need to be constantly soaking up new information and asking questions and trying to figure out how things work and how things are changing.
Right. So it's almost like they have this insatiable need to learn, right?
Okay.
They're always looking for more information.
Exactly. And that kind of ties into another behavior that they highlight, which is pattern recognition.
Ah, okay. So I can see how pattern recognition would be important, for a scientist analyzing data or something like that. But what does that look like for an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think it's about seeing the connections between things. So maybe you're noticing a shift in consumer preferences, or you see a new technology emerging that could really disrupt
Yeah.
your industry.
Like AI, for instance.
Exactly. Being able to spot those patterns early on can give you a huge advantage.
So it's not just about reacting to what's already happened.
Right.
It's being able to see what's coming next, what's on the horizon.
Exactly.
And I guess that ties into what the article talks about with structured experimentation,
Right.
which sounds very scientific and a little bit intimidating.
Yeah, it does sound like, do I need to put on a lab coat and...
Right, exactly. Do I need to come up with a hypothesis and
Yeah.
do all this, official research?
Right. And I think the way that they're talking about it, though, is much more about just this idea of testing
Okay, yeah.
your assumptions and being willing to kind of change course if something isn't working.
Oh, so it's more about being flexible
Exactly.
and adaptable.
So instead of clinging to an idea that's not working,
Yeah.
you're constantly testing things, gathering feedback.
Right, so it kind of goes back to that high failure rate we were talking about,
Yeah.
in the beginning.
Yeah.
You're going to fail, but it's about learning from those failures
Oh, yeah.
and being able to adapt and move on.
Yeah. And that's where I think the specific skills that the article talks about
Okay.
really come in.
So what are some of the skills that they highlight?
Well, there's a whole range. But one that I think is particularly important, especially early on, is organizational skills.
Okay, so being organized.
Yeah.
But what does that look like in the context of, starting a business?
Well, imagine, you're in the early stages of your business. Maybe you're even like a solopreneur.
Right, you're doing everything yourself.
Doing everything yourself. You're handling product development,
Yeah,
marketing, finances, customer service.
it's a lot.
Yeah. And without good organizational skills, it's easy to get overwhelmed, miss deadlines, lose track of your goals?
Yeah, for sure. You need some kind of system.
Yeah.
So are we talking about like color-coded calendars and, perfectly organized files? Is that what we're talking about?
That might work for some people,
Okay.
but I think it's more about finding systems that work for you,
Yeah.
that allow you to manage your time and your resources and your priorities in a way that's effective.
That makes sense. And it makes sense that that would be a valuable skill, not just for running a business, but just for life in general.
Right, exactly. So, we've talked about behaviors and we've talked about skills, but now I want to get into